इस्लामाबाद में ईस्टर में आफिया सिद्दीकी की रिहाई के लिए पाकिस्तानी कौंसलेट के सामने मुजाहरा हो रहा है.
And I know that we all hope that the Pakistani government will do the right thing and get the U.S. government to release our sister, Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. I'm not a Muslim, I'm not Pakistani, but I grew up in the 1960s in the South in the Civil Rights Movement. I knew who Imam Jalil Al-Amin was back when he was H. Brown, a leader of the Civil Rights Movement. I'm here today because as somebody who has been fighting for justice in this country, I know all too well the dirty tricks that the U.S. government plays. We have, ironically, the United States government talks about bringing justice and democracy around the world when in fact they do the opposite. We have political prisoners here who have been locked up for 50, 60 years, who were members of the Black Panther Party, of the Puerto Rican Liberation Front, of the American Indian Movement. And then after 9/11, when the government started all of its anti-Muslim hysteria, we now have cases like Aafia's and also Jalil Al-Amin, who were victims of this racist anti-Muslim hysteria. I talked to a friend of mine in New York today who actually sat through the trial of Dr. Siddiqui in New York City. And she said it was so frustrating because it was all lies. And she said when they sentenced Dr. Siddiqui, she stood up and shouted in court. I forget exactly what she said. She said, "This is an injustice. This should not be happening." Ramsey Clark, who founded the International Action Center, was a friend of mine, and we actually met about 70 miles north of here in Huntsville, Texas, when he was representing a friend of mine who was being executed. I had met Ramsey on a few occasions and never really talked to him. But the night of the execution at midnight, he and I, as the witnesses to the execution, were locked up together in a room with this big white cowboy with his hats and his boots on, guarding us. And we talked about a lot of things that night. When he founded the International Action Center, he made it a point of becoming really an ambassador for justice around the world. And I know that I've read what he has said about Dr. Siddiqui, how her case is such a case of injustice. So, most of our members are at work today. I'm retired, so I'm here. But we will be going up to the prison Saturday. I hope to see some of y'all there. And in the meantime, I just want to say justice for Dr. Siddiqui. Send her home.
Send her home. PM Imran Khan. It's dated for 2019, July 18, 2019. Aafia Siddiqui, the mother of the U.S. detained Pakistani woman scientist Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, has written an open letter to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, appealing him to seek release of the Pakistani mother during his scheduled visit to the USA. In her open letter to PM Imran Khan, Aafia Siddiqui writes, "My dear son, Imran Khan, by the grace of Allah Almighty and the prayers of mothers like me, you have become the chief executive of our beloved Pakistan. Surely I do not need to remind you of how I am suffering, as the unjust captivity of the daughter of Pakistan is indeed as near and dear to your heart as it is mine. With due respect and a sad heart filled with new hope, I humbly request you to please help save my daughter Dr. Aafia, whose name is now synonymous with the dignity and honor of Pakistan. Your visit to the U.S. and meeting with the President Trump is a new ray of hope for Pakistanis and myself that you will not only demand the release of your sister Aafia, but do so with a resolve only true leaders can. My son Imran Khan, need I remind you of our phone conversations? You are a ray of hope in this bleak time of uncertainty. My son, I am sure you agree that bringing Aafia back home is a singularity, most important issue that not only raises the status of every Pakistani, it shows the world that when it comes to our honor and our daughters, we are no longer daughter sellers. Now Imran Khan is here to show we are a nation of principle and dignity. India will rise to highest levels for a terrorist just because he is theirs. America will take back killers like Raymond Davis. Why should we not stand for our innocent daughter? Aafia killed no one. She stands for love and peace and regards you as a great hero. Please, all I ask, just allow a dying mother to embrace her daughter and children, reunite to pick up the pieces and have some closure. My health is ailing and I am becoming weaker as the days have turned into years, but I keep hope in Allah and the Quran that a savior like you will rise, for Allah has bestowed on you the power to resolve this issue. Please bring back my daughter as a dying mother's mercy. Please have the courage in your heart to take a firm stance. Inshallah, Pakistan will rise victorious and dignified. May the guidance of Allah be with you.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, इस वक्त पाकिस्तानी कौंसलेट ह्यूस्टन के सामने आफिया सिद्दीकी की रिहाई के लिए मुजाहरा हो रहा है। हम बात करेंगे इस तहरीक के जो कायद हैं उनसे, वो बताएंगे कि ये तहरीक क्यों है। Yes brother, what is the background for this whole organization? What are you doing to support Aafia and why you are supporting Aafia?
Well, Aafia Siddiqui's case is a case that we have been involved in for at least a little over 12 years. A year after she was brought back to the United States after 5 years of secret imprisonment and torture, her case came to our attention and we became involved. And we ended up coming to a realization very quickly that Aafia's case was one of the most serious cases, one of the most weighty cases, a case that symbolized injustice more than the vast majority of cases we've been involved in over the years. That became very clear, and we decided to weigh in and to do what we could to try to get her free and back home where she belongs. But Aafia Siddiqui is clearly a person who has been wrongfully imprisoned now for 18 years. And that imprisonment is a very bad reflection on the United States of America, a country that likes to project itself around the world as a land of liberty and justice for all. But it's also a bad reflection on on Pakistan, because she is a Pakistani citizen, and the government of Pakistan should be doing a lot more to get her back where she belongs.
Okay. Recently there was a news that she got attacked in the prison.
Yes.
Do you know anything about that? Have you
yes.
talked to her?
Well, no. I have not been permitted to visit Aafia. I get my information on her condition through other sources. Yeah, it's well, right now the only source is the attorney that's able to go in and see her. Aafia is under very, and has been since she's been at FMC Carswell, under very stringent restrictions in terms of visitors. In fact, the former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark, a few years back, we invited him to Texas for a mobilization that we were having for Aafia, and he attempted to visit her. This is the former U.S. Attorney General, and they ended up lying to him, telling him that Aafia did not want to see him, when in fact she was not made aware that he wanted to visit with her until way after the fact.
So one thing is the background under which she was arrested, as is being said by the U.S., is very vague. How she ended up in Bagram, this is not sure. Do you know how it happened?
Well, first of all, she wasn't arrested. Aafia was kidnapped. She was kidnapped along with her children. It was a rendition operation, the type of operation that's been conducted against many Muslim bodies in different parts of the Muslim world. She was kidnapped along with her children and then disappeared. She was disappeared in March, the end of March of 2003, and then for the next 5 years, no one knew where she was, her or her children. And it was based upon, if you give the U.S. government the benefit of the doubt, originally it was based on bad intelligence. They believed that Aafia had ties to Al-Qaeda. In fact, she was being described as a high facilitator for Al-Qaeda, when the reality is that Aafia had no ties to Al-Qaeda. And we know that she was held at different places, different black sites. The last place that she was held was Bagram. And the only way that the way that we came to that awareness is after the escape of 4 Arab Muslims who escaped from Bagram, who were being held as secretly held prisoners and tortured. And they told stories about this Pakistani woman that they would see from time to time, and they would hear her cries at night and you know, missing her children, not knowing where they were, and also you know, cries that resulted from what was being done to her. And so when those 4 men escaped and they told these stories about this Pakistani woman who they had come to know had spent some years in the United States, and that she was torn from her children, that information alone, as it began to be spread, that information alone enabled people in the know to realize this is probably Aafia Siddiqui being held there.
Okay, because our viewers are in Pakistan, do you want to say a thing about Pakistani government and people of Pakistan? What should they do about Aafia?
All right.
You're talking to Pakistani people now.
One of the reasons why we're out here where we are today, in front of the Pakistani consulate in Houston, Texas, is because this consulate has oversight responsibility over Aafia Siddiqui as a Pakistani citizen. We also wanted to be here because this consulate symbolizes the people. In fact, I'll stand this way. It symbolizes the people of Pakistan. And I visited Pakistan in 2014. I arrived in Karachi, and I visited Aafia's home, and we did a large press conference there. And then we visited other parts of the country for those days I was in Pakistan. We visited Islamabad, the capital. We visited Lahore. And before I left, we went all the way up into the territory right next to Afghanistan. Peshawar. We were in Peshawar. And everywhere I went during that journey, everywhere I went, there were large crowds of people that would meet. I mean, they would hear just a few hours in advance that the sister of Aafia Siddiqui and this American Muslim was coming through. And they had these impromptu rallies that were huge. They were huge rallies. And I got a very up close and personal view of how the people of Pakistan feel about Aafia Siddiqui. She is indeed the daughter of the nation, and so that's the other reason why we're here. We're not protesting the government. We're not protesting this consulate. We are here to show our support for Aafia Siddiqui, and also to express our solidarity with the millions of Pakistanis who want her back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.